So welcome everybody to the Pantheon. I'm your host Ray, and today we're looking at The Last Dragon. It's part of our Black History Month films that we are going to be reviewing. Today's review is Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, starring Tamik and Vanity, one name actors. uh, yeah, so Tamik plays Leroy Green. I keep wanting to say Bruce Leroy, and Vanity plays Laura Charles. Now, Laura is a VJ. Best way to describe it, like a video disc jockey. She's the hottest VJ in the city or in the country right now, and whatever she pushes along in terms of music videos, it becomes number one or it gets a lot of airtime. We have a man named Eddie Arcadia who runs a string of arcades. That's what I think what the theme of the show is, and he wants to push his girlfriend's latest music video. She's a musician herself. Her name's Angela, and he wants to get her song out there, and the only way to put a rocket on your back to stardom is to get your video shown. She refuses, and he gets upset and tries to kill her or rub her off. That's the where it gets a little extreme. It's like when you were, I guess the concept like having an only child who wants anything he gets, and when things don't go his way, he gets a little violent. And then here, that's when we've Tamik, Bruce Leroy, or Leroy Green, sorry, who steps in and saves her when the goons come and attacks. And he's coming just coincidentally the two times they've attacked her. He's been there to save her, and as a result, she hires him as his personal bodyguard. Now, Leroy Green has his own problems. He is looking to become a martial arts master, and he's looking for a specific person to help him get to that next level. And there's a person named Show Snuff or Shogun of Harlem who wants to rule Harlem with an iron fist, the gang life, the streets. And Leroy seems to be the only thing standing in his way. And now, but being a person who fights without fighting, being a pacifist, not Leroy doesn't want to tries to avoid conflict, but having Laura there has put him in the crosshairs between what Eddie Arcady wants and what the Shogun wants. To save Laura, he's got to face Shogun, and he's got to face the goons that Eddie Arcady has sent to attack him. Okay? The premise is really straightforward. It's cut and dry. There's no twist or turn. It's a love story between a young fledgling martial arts master and this VJ. It's on the surface level of what it is. It's sort of cute and nice. It's comical because it's like a fish out of water, sort of like Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman in the first film where she was first introduced into the world of man. And Steve Trevor was the person who helped navigate her into the world of like society. And so Bruce Leroy Green, sorry, is unfamiliar with like the ways of how things are done. He eats popcorn with chopsticks. He believes he is the last dragon, as a descendant from Bruce Lee to try to become a martial arts master. And even though he's from New York and his parents own a pizza shop in New York City, and he has a brother who seems like a New Yorker, Leroy's the only person who doesn't respond or act like he is from New York or is black. He actually believes he's like ancient Chinese, and he acts that way with no probable cause, because he was born and raised in New York. And even his master, who's trained him to as far as he could, is treating him a little like just like as a joke, because he's taking this idea of being a martial arts master, in the form of being like old school Asian to the next degree. And that seems a little off, but it's kind of funny because it deals with a VJ and an arcade baron. Millennials will have zero concept of why this conflict is going on. The idea of music videos, it was the biggest thing. I mean, in terms of like how we have like cell phones holding your music and everything like that. I mean, that wasn't a thing yet. It was, and Twitter and social media, that wasn't a thing yet. It'd be years, literally almost a full decade later before we even came close to having Twitter or email, as being a thing. So this predates a lot of that stuff, and it's it's not. I'm gonna say this movie. It is okay. This movie, it's good. It has its moments, but in the scheme of things, even in the special effects in the final sequence, the final fight sequence, um, it's past its prime. It is not worth watching. If it's more of like, okay, if you want to have a movie night where it's like worst movies to watch, like a fun popcorn like Razzie kind of film. Though this film isn't a Razzie, it is done with a certain degree of charm and sensitivity. But it is also very self-aware that it is a joke on itself. And I think the reason why and I think the reason that it is can't be categorized as a Razzie necessarily is because it is very self-aware of itself in what it's doing. But it gives homage to Bruce Lee. It gives homage to Enter the Dragon by acknowledging those things and actually putting it on the screen in relations to the character themselves, and to show you how absurd it actually is, but also in a kind of like an enduring um like love for the art and love for the martial arts and love for the actor in its own way, and infusing the ideas of like music and a simple story like good and evil, the 1978 Superman is kind of a theme base for it. This is where it comes from, and the idea of the art of fighting without fighting, which came from the actual line in Into the Dragon. So in that sense, it's not a Razzie because it was done specifically tongue heavily into the cheek, and because of that, you can't make it a Razzie because it's too self-aware of itself. It's aware of its own joke, uh, but it is not quality of film back then, especially now. So it's not worth watching unless you were from that time, unless you want to look at like an era, like a period piece that doesn't exist. It's a period piece that exists outside of its own period, if that makes any sense. And this is a movie for you to watch just to see it for what it is. It's not as bad as The Room because it's intentional and it's a love story which is endearing and touching, but it is a movie that's really, really lost its place. Anyways, with that, I'm Ray. We'll talk to you later. Take care.